The birch tree leaned at a slight angle, as though time and weather had nudged it gently year after year until it no longer stood quite straight. Its white bark was marked with dark scars from winters long past, and thin branches reached upward like fingers tracing the sky. At its highest point, where the tree curved against the backdrop of evening, an owl perched. The owl's feathers blended into the dimness, mottled browns and pale grays that caught what little light remained. Its round eyes, deep and dark, reflected the faint glow of the rising moon. The owl did not move. Its stillness was not effort, but nature, the kind of stillness that comes from knowing that nothing in the night is ever rushed. Below, the forest was quiet. Not silent, never silent, but quiet in a way that felt aware. Leaves whispered against one another in the soft breeze. A distant stream murmured where stones sat unmoving in its path. Insects sang, but gently, their voices thin threads woven through darkness rather than noise. The night had not yet settled fully, but it was preparing to. The owl watched. It watched the clearing below, where grass grew uneven and wild. It watched the space between the trees, the thin paths carved by deer and fox, and the occasional wandering traveler. It watched the sky, where clouds drifted slow and faint, like the memory of breath on glass. And the owl listened. Owls listen in a way few creatures do. Not for words, not for meaning, for movement, for stillness broken, for the quiet shift of the world's rhythm. This night, the rhythm felt different. Somewhere beyond the clearing, past a cluster of pines and a fallen log, something stirred. Not a predator, not prey, a person. The owl knew the difference. The footsteps were soft, uneven, careful. Someone accustomed to walking in darkness, but not used to being watched by it. A girl appeared at the edge of the clearing. She was small, shoulders drawn close under a shawl, her hair tucked behind her ears. She carried no lamp. She did not need one. The moon, though thin, offered enough guidance for someone who had walked here many times before. Her movements were slow, deliberate. She did not seem afraid. She approached the leaning birch and stopped beneath it, resting one hand gently against the bark. Her breath formed a faint, pale cloud in the cool air. "I'm here," she whispered, though no one stood beside her. The owl blinked. The girl closed her eyes for a moment, as though listening to something the night held suspended around her. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't know where else to go." The owl did not shift. The tree did not sway. But something in the forest seemed to take in the words and hold them. A long silence followed, not empty, but full. Leaves rustled near the ground as a fox passed through the shadows. The girl did not look at it. The owl did. The owl knew grief, though not as humans did. It knew loss in changes of migration patterns, in nests left empty, in the way the forest shifts shape when a creature is no longer there. Grief was something the forest carried without speaking. The girl opened her eyes again. They were tired, but not hollow. "I remember him," she said, speaking to the night, to the tree, to the stillness itself. "He used to sit here, right here." The owl remembered too, though memory for an owl was not picture or story. It was simply the familiar imprint of presence, the way the air feels different when someone returns or does not. The night paused, truly paused, just long enough for her words to settle. Then a breeze moved through gently, as though the forest was answering with touch instead of voice. The girl stepped back from the tree, looking up at the owl. She did not smile. She did not startle. She simply nodded, a small, quiet acknowledgement of another watcher in the world. The owl lowered its head, not greeting, not farewell. Recognition. The girl turned and walked slowly back into the forest, the sound of her steps fading into the undergrowth. The owl remained on the leaning birch. The night continued. But now, the silence felt shared. The next night arrived in the same quiet way, slipping over the forest without hurry. The air was slightly warmer, the wind softer, carrying the scent of damp bark and thawing soil. Clouds moved slowly across the sky, letting moonlight come and go in gentle waves. The leaning birch did not shift, though time pressed against it the way it presses against all living things. The owl returned to the same branch. It had hunted earlier, taking a mouse from the field where long grass bowed under the weight of dew. Its belly was full. There was no hunger to sharpen or soften its attention. It perched now because this place had become part of its nightly path, the way familiar territory settles into instinct. The clearing below lay still. The fox was gone tonight, hidden somewhere deeper in the woods. A rabbit moved near the edge, ears upright, cautious but not alarmed. Somewhere farther off, a deer's slow steps traced through fallen leaves. The owl listened to everything, and in the listening, it felt the same subtle shift in the quiet that had come the night before. Footsteps, soft, measured, returning. The girl emerged once more from the tree line. She walked a little faster this time, though not as if rushing, just as if she had decided not to hesitate. Her shawl hung loosely around her shoulders, her hands bare in the cool night air. She carried something small and wrapped in a cloth. She stopped beneath the leaning birch again. No words yet, just presence. The owl watched her, head turning slightly. Not curiosity, not question. Simply attention. The girl knelt and unfolded the cloth. Inside lay a simple wooden whistle, carved from pale wood, worn smooth by years of handling. It was small enough to fit in a child's palm. The girl held it in both of her hands, gentle, as if it could break though it was sturdy. "He made this," she said, her voice steady, though something inside the words trembled. "When I was younger, he said the birds would answer if we listened properly." She lifted the whistle to her lips. The sound she made was soft, not a melody, not a call, just breath passing through wood. It did not travel far. It did not need to. The forest responded anyway. Not with birdsong, the night belonged to different voices, but with the faint stirring of leaves, the shifting of small creatures adjusting their positions, the awareness that passes through living things when something gentle touches the air. The owl blinked, eyelids lowering and lifting like a slow thought. "He used to sit here," the girl said again, her voice quieter this time. "He said this place was where the world felt closest to listening." She lowered the whistle to her lap and looked up at the owl. Her gaze did not ask for anything, not answers, not comfort, just acknowledgement. The owl tilted its head, the movement small but undeniable. It was enough. The girl breathed in, and her shoulders lowered. Not the release of someone healed. That would take time the way seasons take time. But the release of someone who no longer felt alone inside silence. She wrapped the whistle again slowly, with the same care she had shown when opening it. She did not leave it behind. Some memories are carried, not placed into the ground. When she stood, the night around her felt warmer, though the temperature had not changed. She stepped back toward the forest, pausing just once to place her hand on the birch. Her fingers traced its bark, rough in some places, smooth in others. She did not speak. She did not need to. Then, she walked back into the trees. The owl remained on the branch a long while afterward, watching, listening. The night did not resume immediately. It continued in the way a heart continues after being still for one extra beat, aware of itself, aware of the world, aware of something shared. The third night came with clearer skies. The moon was higher, brighter, though still gentle enough not to dominate the darkness. Its light brushed the tops of the trees, catching in the birch's pale bark and making the leaning trunk appear almost luminous. A light frost had settled over the grass, giving the clearing a faint shimmer, like memory held on the surface of the world. The owl was there before the girl arrived. It had flown silently, wings moving with the slow confidence of a creature that does not need to hurry. It perched in the same place on the birch, though the bark beneath its talons had grown slightly rougher since last season. The owl listened to the forest breathe, the distant rustle of pine needles, the steady hush of the stream, the nearly inaudible movement of a vole under the leaves. Nothing hurried, everything continued. When the girl appeared at the edge of the clearing, The owl noticed before her footsteps touched the ground. She did not walk directly forward this time. She paused first, standing still just inside the line of trees, her face lifted toward the branches above. She seemed to be listening too. Then she stepped into the clearing. Her shawl was drawn tighter now, not from cold, but from the weight of the evening. She carried nothing in her hands tonight. No offerings, no objects, no keepsakes. Her steps were quiet, and when she reached the base of the birch, she simply stood there. "I thought today would be easier," she said, her voice just above a whisper. The owl did not blink. It waited. The girl sat down slowly, drawing her knees close and wrapping her arms around them. She did not cry. Her eyes were dry and steady, though her breaths came softer than before. "It's strange," she said, "how something can be gone and still here." She touched the ground beside her, fingers pressing lightly into the frost-crusted grass. "I keep thinking if I come back enough times, it will feel like it used to." A breeze moved through the clearing, light, almost fragile, stirring only the uppermost leaves. The owl felt it in its feathers, a cool shifting of air that did not disturb the stillness. The girl looked up toward the owl then, not searching, not asking for meaning the way people sometimes do when they want the world to answer their grief, just looking, sharing the moment. "He liked this place because it was quiet," she said, "but it wasn't the kind of quiet that pushed you away. It was the kind that made space for you." Her voice did not waver. It softened. "I think I needed that too." The owl's head rotated slightly, a slow, fluid movement, precise and natural. The owl understood places. It understood where creatures return when something has been lost. It knew that some clearings do not belong to seasons or to time, but to memory. A fox moved along the far tree line, its shadow gliding between young saplings. The girl saw it. She did not react. The forest did not startle her. It never had. She had grown with it, held by it, changed by it. For a long time, they simply sat. Girl and owl, earth and frost, night holding everything in its palm. Eventually, the girl rose. She brushed her hands together softly, letting the frost fall back to the ground. Her breath formed another pale cloud in the air. She placed her hand on the birch again, fingers splayed against worn white bark. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said. There was no promise in the words, only truth. She stepped away, leaving no hurry in her departure. Her figure slipped into the trees, her presence fading into the quiet in the same way she had entered it, gently, naturally, like something that belonged. The owl remained. The night resumed, not as it had been before, but with one more breath inside it. The fourth night arrived without ceremony. No wind, no frost, no shifting clouds to hint at change. The air was still, held lightly between daytime warmth and evening cool, as though the world had paused in its turning. The birch stood in its familiar lean, its white bark reflecting the dim moonlight in soft, broken patches. The owl perched in the same place, silent, present, unhurried. Tonight the girl came later. The forest had nearly settled into full night before her footsteps touched the clearing. When she appeared, she did not walk with the same calm as the nights before. Her breaths were uneven, catching in her chest. She did not sit. She stood just beneath the birch, head bowed, hands clenched at her sides. The moonlight caught the tremble in her shoulders. The owl watched. Silence gathered around her, not to press, but to hold. When she finally lifted her face, her eyes glimmered, not with tears falling, but with tears held, in the way a person tries not to release all at once. "He left today," she said. The words were quiet, but they cut through the night with the clarity of a single bell rung in an empty room. "My father," she continued, voice thin, "he said he couldn't stay here anymore, that the house is too full of what's missing." She breathed once, shaky. "He went to live with my aunt in the city. He asked if I wanted to come." She shook her head slowly, not an answer to anyone, simply the motion of someone trying to understand themselves. "I couldn't. This is where he was, where I can remember him without losing him." She looked at the ground, and her voice thinned again. "But now I'm the only one left." A quiet settled. Not heavy, not cold, just real. A small movement sounded at the edge of the clearing. Soft steps, cautious. A young deer emerged from the undergrowth. It did not come close, but it did not run. It lowered its head to graze, calm in the presence of the girl, the owl, the tree. The girl watched the deer for a moment. Her breathing slowed, her hands loosened. The forest was not trying to comfort her. It simply continued. And sometimes continuation is the gentlest thing the world can offer. She reached into her pocket and drew out the wooden whistle. She held it lightly as though the wood itself might remember how it once felt to be touched by another hand. She did not play it tonight. She only held it. The owl blinked, the slow, deliberate blink of a creature that knows patience is not waiting, but being. The girl whispered, barely sound at all, "I miss him." The night did not echo the words back. It held them. She rested her back against the leaning birch, letting the rough bark press into her shoulders. Her breaths became quieter, deeper, the way breaths become when grief settles into something less sharp. She stayed there a long time, eyes lifted toward the sky where stars dimmed and brightened behind drifting thin clouds. Nothing changed in the clearing, nothing needed to. When she finally stepped away, she touched the tree once softly, almost like a hand resting on another's shoulder. "I'll be here tomorrow," she said. Not out of need, out of knowing. She walked back into the forest. The sound of her footsteps faded slowly, gently. The owl did not move. The deer lifted its head once, then continued grazing. The night exhaled, and the clearing returned to quiet. Not the quiet of absence, but the quiet of presence that understands loss and does not fear it. The fifth night came with a gentle wind, the kind that moves slowly through branches as though smoothing them, rather than bending them. The moon was lower now, caught between cloud and tree line, its light scattered in soft fragments across the clearing. The leaning birch stood as it always had, steady in its imperfection. The owl perched in its familiar place, feathers ruffling once, then settling. The forest was quiet but not expectant. The night did not wait for the girl. It simply allowed room for her if she came. She did. But tonight her steps were different. Not rushed, not heavy, simply present. As though she was no longer arriving from the world outside, but from a place the clearing already knew. She crossed the grass without hesitation and sat at the base of the birch. No ceremony, no pause. Her movements were natural, unforced, like breathing. She did not speak immediately. The owl watched her, head angled just slightly to one side, not questioning, observing. Finally, the girl exhaled, a slow, soft release of air that seemed to settle into the soil. "It doesn't hurt the same way anymore," she said. Not relief, not forgetting, just truth. "It's still there. I still miss him." Her fingers brushed the ground, tracing patterns through the grass. "But the missing doesn't break me now." A faint rustle moved through the understory. A fox slipped past the clearing's edge, its presence brief, a streak of movement, a reminder that all lives continue in their own directions. The girl watched it disappear and her lips curved, just slightly, not quite a smile, but something close enough to be real. She lifted the wooden whistle again, holding it gently between her palms. This time she played. The note was soft, almost too quiet to travel far. It did not call anything. It did not echo. It simply moved through the clearing the way wind moves through leaves, touching, not altering. The owl listened. The forest listened. The night listened. It was a sound that did not try to summon or reach or change. It was a sound of being. When the girl lowered the whistle, she looked up at the owl. Her gaze held clarity now. Still sadness, yes, but sadness that knew how to live alongside breath. "I thought if I came here, I might find him," she said. "But I didn't." She paused. "And that's all right. I found myself instead." The owl blinked slowly, a long, silent recognition. The girl stood. There was no urgency in her movement, no reluctance. She placed her hand on the birch once more, palm flat against the bark. Not goodbye, not holding on, just touch. "I'll still come," she said. "Not because I need to, because I want to." She stepped back into the trees, leaving the clearing with the same quiet confidence as the creatures who belonged to it. Her presence faded, but something lingered. Not grief, not longing. Continuity. The owl remained on the branch, feathers brushing lightly in the night breeze. It watched the clearing the way it always had. The world had not changed dramatically. The birch still leaned, the moon still moved, the night still breathed. But the silence beside the owl felt different now. Not waiting, not mourning, simply alive.